5 quick nutrition tips for effective training, good recovery, and longevity in the sport. The topic of nutrition is really complicated, and there are so many different paradigms, and it's changing all the time, but some things are pretty much not very controversial. Some things are cut and dried, and whether the guy's a paleo guy, whether the guy's a low-fat guy, whether they follow this crazy diet or that crazy diet, and they're advocating this kind of supplement or that kind of supplement, pretty much these 5 tips, I hope everybody who has any kind of credibility would agree on. These are going to be quick because I don't want this to turn into a giant hour-long video essay. So number 1, sugar. Sugar is pretty much the enemy in most situations. So you got to learn all the different names of sugar. Sugar hides in so many names in packages. You go look at the ingredient list on a package and you'll find sugar. It's not the first ingredient, it's not the second ingredient, but it's ingredient 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's actually, sugar is the first ingredient. They just were very clever and split it up. So sugar is sugar. Glucose-Fructose is sugar. Cane syrup is sugar. Raw rice syrup is sugar. Molasses is sugar. There are so many names for sugar. They're so sneaky about getting it in, but it's all sugar. And sugar almost always is the enemy. There's an exception when you're working out, when you're just about to work out super hard, or maybe you halfway through a workout, you are allowed some sugar, but you shouldn't be eating sugar for breakfast, you shouldn't be eating sugar for lunch, you shouldn't be eating sugar for dinner. Sugar, the more you minimize it, the better off you're going to be in your sport, and also you're not going to die of diabetes. Diabetes is a freaking horrible disease. My aunt lost both of her legs to diabetes. Her legs looked black, like they had leprosy, and they had to cut them off, and then she died. I've seen tons of people in late-stage diabetes. It's awful. You want to avoid it. Sugar is the enemy. The next big takeaway is learn what glycemic index is. Glycemic index is a number. Each food has a different glycemic index. Now, we could get really complicated here and start talking about biochemical individuality and how some people absorb different foods differently and glycemic load and all that. But in order to understand any of that, you need to understand the basic idea of glycemic index first. So if I was to eat 1,000 calories of glucose, glucose has a glycemic index of 100. My blood sugar would go straight up and then it would crash straight down. Glycemic index of 100 is very high. It means that it goes into the blood right away. Instead of eating glucose, if I was to eat cabbage, I was to eat 1,000 calories of cabbage. The fiber in that cabbage and the fact that it's not easy to digest, would be a hell of a lot of cabbage too. My blood sugar would go up very slowly and I'd probably be good for the whole day. I don't know what the glycemic index of cabbage is, but it's a whole lot less than 100. So if you start thinking of foods as being high glycemic index, like baked potatoes, like white rice. White rice isn't as high as baked potatoes, but once you start looking at glycemic index, you can start figuring out how big a blood sugar spike you're going to get. This also takes us back to point number 1, because guess what? If you drink a Coke, there is a lot of sugar in that Coke. You are going to spike and you're going to have a big blood sugar high and then a big blood sugar low. Every time that your blood sugar rockets up and down like that, it's a drain on your body. You're going to have the trough at the end of it. You're also putting a big strain on your insulin system, right? You are setting yourself up for diabetes in the long run. As we talked about earlier, you want to avoid diabetes. So learn what glycemic index is. Generally speaking, you want to eat at the low end of that. Yams, sweet potatoes, much lower glycemic index than white potatoes, regular potatoes. So if you can have the choice of which ones to have with dinner, you're going to choose the yams. You're going to choose the sweet potatoes. Brown rice, a little bit lower glycemic index than white rice. So if it's a choice between going for the brown rice sushi and the white rice sushi, go for the brown rice sushi. To tie these two concepts of sugar and glycemic index together, let's take a look at Red Bull, right? Red Bull. It's everyone's favorite soft drink. Same exact thing applies to Coke. Same exact thing applies to Pepsi. Same exact thing applies to 7-Up. So you look at the label and I read that it's got 27 grams of carbohydrates, which are sugar. In this case, in pop, they're not putting in complex carbohydrates. They're putting in sugar. It's going to be glucose-fructose. Let's take a look at the recipe. Oh, look. Carbonated water, sugar, glucose-fructose, citric acid, taurine. So the 2 of the first 3 ingredients are sugar. So there's 27 grams in there. 1 teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams. So that's 4 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28 minus 1 gram. So there. So if you're going to drink this, you're essentially eating this much sugar. I'm going to sit down and mow down on that sugar. How do you think that's going to treat your body? So, learn to read labels, learn to find the hidden sugars, and learn to recognize the things that are going to spike your blood sugar hugely high because of the high glycemic index. The third tip I want to discuss just quickly is trans fat. Trans fat is another thing that's almost unambiguously bad. It's a chemical type of fat. The reason that people put trans fat into food, when you buy Twinkies, there's probably some trans fat in there. The reason is it's stable. It sits there on the shelf. It can sit there on the 7-Eleven counter for months and months and months and months and months and not change. Well, when it goes in your body, it also doesn't get broken down by your body either. It's incredibly strongly linked to heart attack, to stroke, to cardiovascular disease. It's really not good for you. As of right now, it's supposed to be phased out of American nutrition by June 18th, 2018. So hopefully this is going to be a non-issue. But first of all, you might go traveling to a country that hasn't banned it yet. And second of all, given all the reversals that are happening with like the environmental protection, with our land and our air and our water, who knows if the protections around food are going to also be eroded by the current administration. So trans fat is unambiguously bad. There's nobody out there saying that trans fat is good for you. The commercially manufactured trans fat that's going into, is essentially a form of oil. It's a form of stable oil. You don't want stable oil in your body. You want oil that you can break down. Most nutrition labels will break out fat and trans fat. My rule is if there's trans fat in it, don't eat it. You want to scare yourself? Go look at the popcorn packages. The microwave popcorn, that stuff has to sit on the shelf at the supermarket for months and months and months. And then oil can't go rancid. It has to taste good. And it tastes good when it goes pop, 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 and pops up. But it's basically super high in trans fat to keep it stable and to poison you. So avoid trans fat. Rule 4, eat more veggies, and potatoes don't count as veggies. The more colorful vegetables you can eat, red peppers, yellow peppers, green beans, Brussels sprouts, kale, anything with color, and most fruit as well. The only problem with fruit, some of it tends to be high sugar. So fruit juice is not fruit and vegetables, and potatoes are not vegetables. The more vegetables you can eat, the better. They're high in fiber, taking us back to the glycemic index thing. There's a ton of antioxidants, there's a ton of micronutrients, there's a ton of essentially supplements. Real food, unprocessed food, is the ultimate supplement you can have. Eat more veggies. Half your plate should be full of veggies, and then the rest of the plate should be full of other stuff. Fifth tip, be mindful of your eating right before training and right after training. Find something that you can eat right before training and find that magic time that makes you feel good on the mat or in the dojo or in the training hall or working out. I learned this the hard way when I was age 15. I went off to a really physically tough kung fu class with a couple of pork chops in my belly, because I just wolfed those down, then ran off, and 15 minutes later I was doing push-ups and calisthenics, and 18 minutes later I was busy barfing in the waste paper basket at the side of the gym. It was the first time throwing up while working out. It's kind of a rite of passage, and I learned that pork chops are not a good pre-workout supplement. So find something that works for you. I find personally, and this is just me, you're going to find something different for you, a slice of whole wheat toast with some almond butter about half an hour before training, and I'm good to go. That's just got the right mix of fat and carbs, but doesn't overload my stomach, allows me to work out fairly hard, fuels me for that workout, and allows me to get the most out of that time. You got to find what works for you. Incidentally, most pre-workout supplements are nothing but caffeine and sugar, taking us back to the number 1 point. Yes, they might have, inosol dipicolate, ethyl methyl bad stuff in it as well, and claim that that's the actual secret ingredient. Take a look at the amount of caffeine. These things are just caffeine and sugar bombs, and no wonder you feel like working out, and no wonder you have difficulty sleeping afterwards. The second part of the nutrition around training is your post-workout nutrition. If you've really drained yourself with a hard workout, and you're just completely beaten down? Well, number one, you're dehydrated. So drink something, drink a quantity of water. Don't just go and drink at the water fountain because you don't know how much you're getting into you. Have a liter of water. Drink at least half a liter of water. I like to drink a liter of water. That way I know I'm getting enough liquid right after working out. Second point of the post-workout thing is you'll recover a lot faster if you get some kind of solid food with some carbs, maybe a bit of fat, and protein into you right after you eat. Right? If you have like a post-workout shake, that's a great time to get some food in your system because it'll start the recovery process. Your body can start building itself up again, start repairing all the little micro trauma, the little muscle tears, the little aches and pains. It can start repairing that, but it needs stuff to work with. So a little bit of carbs, a little bit of protein. You can use like a protein shake or a post-workout shake and go make a smoothie, go pound something into your mouth right after your workout, and that should help a lot. So I hope those 5 points, sugar, glycemic index, trans fat, veggies, and workout nutrition helped a little bit. Like I said, this is a gigantic topic. I could go on for hours and hours and hours, and I would probably be wrong about some aspects of it, but almost anybody who's standing here telling you what's going to work for you is going to be wrong. Those 5 things, though, I think are fairly uncontroversial. They're fairly well proven by science, and I think if you implement them, if you try implementing them, you'll only benefit. All right, good luck, and I'll see you on the mats another day.